I'm here.
Welcome to Down to Dunk. I'm your host, Andrew Schlecht. We're part of the Athletic Podcast Network. With me today on a Wednesday is my good friend, Alex Speers. Alex, what's up?
What's up, Andrew?
Dude, I still can't believe that they beat the Celtics last night. I still cannot believe that the Thunder, they held on. They were killing them at one point, but they kind of let go of the rope a little bit. The way that Mark characterized it after the games, they got a little sloppy toward the end of the game, but then were able to pull it together enough to win that one. You know, after what they've done recently is insane. Like, beat the Clippers, destroyed Minnesota, beat the Knicks, beat Denver in Denver, beat Brooklyn, and then beat Boston. I mean, like, this was a part of the schedule that we kind of circled. And like, okay, we'll kind of find out like what they're made of during this time.
Yeah,
And I don't think I would have ever said that like this is what they were going to do. I would have looked like a fool had I said
even with
what they're going to do.
Even with the home games, because I mean, other than the Denver game, I think these have all been at home.
Yeah.
The quality of competition was just so high that you like that game last night would have been less surprising if they had lost some of these games previously. It's almost like it was building up, and you were just like, well, they can't do this too, right?
Yeah.
They can't also beat Boston.
It's just too greedy to say that they could also beat Boston.
I mean, you would have sounded insane if you had predicted this, and you would have been insane, by the way. You would have been insane. Now, you would have been right.
Yeah.
Sometimes. But yeah, it was super impressive. And talking about we can jump right to the fourth quarter to start with, because I did think what was interesting about that fourth quarter, they're up 18 with however minutes left, and Boston comes all the way back. Once it hit the 5-minute mark, I think that's when Boston had cut it to 10. It was like 110-100.
Yeah.
And from that point forward, it really was the big three. It was Dub, Chet, and Shea the rest of the way.
Yeah.
And it was such an interesting game, because if you had told Boston before the game, hey, Josh Giddey and Lou Dort are going to be second and third in shot attempts, they would have said, hey, we'll take that. And if you told that to Thunder fans, they would have said, well, how's that going to work? Maybe they all had exactly the same amount. But then you get to the end of the game, entering that fourth quarter, Dub had 5 shot attempts. Chet had 6 shot attempts. They obviously were playing great, despite, those guys not taking a lot of shots. But I did think it was nice to see at the end of that game, it all come back around to those big three. It was Chet hitting those big threes. It was Dub, that play he made to put them up 4, where he drives into Jason Tatum, and Tatum just bounces off of him, and he shoots that mid-range floater in the lane. Like, those were huge plays.
Oh my gosh.
And it was all the main guys, and they all looked so confident doing that.
Yeah, in the fourth quarter, Dub nearly played the entire quarter, was 3 of 4 from the field, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 8 points. Chet was 2 of 3 for 6 points. Giddey made a couple free throws. Shea missed all 3 of his shots, but made 3 of 4 from the free throw line. It was outrageous. And then Jay Will started the fourth and had 5 points, including a 3, which his 3 was big. All of Chet's 3s just felt so massive. Those 2 in the fourth quarter just felt like one that pushed it back, like the lead back to 9, that you just felt like, oh my gosh. It was like one of those moments where it was just like pure relief in the building, because you could feel like the Thunder like fan base like tightening up a little bit in the building. But he hit the one with about 5 minutes left to push the lead back to, I think, 11. And then with 2 minutes left, it was 116-110. And he hit the 3 with like 2:05 left. And that was a huge one, because I'm not sure they win the game without that one with 2 minutes left from Chet. I mean, that was a big time shot for a guy who hadn't, like you said, hadn't taken a whole lot of shots up to that point in the game, and was ready and willing to hit. And the biggest thing is that the Celtics had changed up their defense to stop Shea, and they put Tatum on Shea, and it was really bothering him. And Shea was, to have a star that's just like, okay, I'm going to let the other guys cook a little bit. I mean, that was huge for him to just be the decoy. I mean, he was the screener on that J-Dub shot in the lane on Tatum
Yeah.
to win the game. He was the screener. I mean, we've seen it's this team is so much fun to watch because like they play unselfish basketball. They play the right way all the time. I mean, just all the time. And you have your star player willing to be the screener on the last possession. I mean, I remember I was doing stuff for Vantage Sports on screens, and I was just like astonished, like looking at the numbers of, Westbrook screens. It was just like, man, he only screens accidentally. Like, are they recording this because he ran into somebody? Like, he wasn't screening for anybody. But for Shea to like be the guy, he's like, I'm going to be the decoy. I'm going to be the one to set the screen. I'm going to pull the defense away from me. It's just crazy. It was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. And it was just very well executed basketball down the stretch.
And as good as Tatum was at the end of that game on Shea, I think that kind of highlighted, which is not something I felt before the game, but this is a pretty good matchup for OKC.
Yeah.
Because if Derek White and Drew Holiday can't stop Shea, really their best option is Jason Tatum. And as good as he is, you don't want him guarding Shea for the entire game.
Yeah,
he's not.
Can't. Yeah, you're right.
He can't do what he did on the other end. Because I saw a lot of Celtics fans saying, like, I wish we had gone to Tatum sooner. And like, there is a limit to that. Like, there is some point where you can't go to him that soon. Like, you can't start him off on Shea in the first quarter. Most likely, at least in like a playoff setting. Like, maybe you could try it.
Yeah,
but I don't know. I went back and watched all of his shot attempts. So he was 5 of 7 against Derek White, 5 of 8 against Drew Holiday, 2 of 2 against Hauser, 1 of 1 against Porzingis, Horford, Brown. This is like as a primary defender. Mm-hmm. And then he was 0 of 2 against Tatum.
Yeah.
Which it wasn't just that he was 0 of 2. It was that he wasn't taking as many shots, like you mentioned. Like Tatum was really doing a good job of just preventing him from getting to his spots.
He did great.
So yeah, but that still like makes me feel pretty good. Not that they would obviously only meet up in the NBA Finals, which who knows? I guess we'll talk about that at this point. But yeah, I thought this team, they're surprisingly like a decent matchup. Like I felt better about playing Boston than even playing a team like the Lakers. And part of it is that I was looking at the percentage of their shots that are rim attempts, and Boston is 26th in the league. They take like 30% of their shots at the rim.
Yeah.
The Lakers are number 2 in the league. And I was kind of like, oh, maybe that's why it feels so different. Like the Lakers create so much more rim pressure. And even though you're watching that game last night and thinking, man, the Celtics are big. Like they have a lot of big dudes. You don't really feel it as much as when they play the Lakers because they're not creating as much rim pressure. Now you feel it in the sense that they're getting all these calls, which that
get a lot of calls.
Thing.
Offensive rebounds too. There were some offensive rebounds that felt big last night. There was one. It was funny. Like I think only Peyton Pritchard only had one, but there's like one that Peyton Pritchard had in the fourth quarter that just felt like it just felt like a big one.
Well, I mean, any Peyton Pritchard offensive rebound is gonna hurt. Gonna make you feel bad and dumb.
Agreed. Yeah, I mean, Porzingis was awesome last night.
He was.
Tatum was incredible, but like you're right. Like Shea was roasting Derek White, and it was
funny, not. It wasn't even like he was making some crazy shots, no doubt, but like a lot of it was him just like blowing by Derek White.
Yeah, he wasn't even bothered by him. He wasn't bothered by him at all. Same with Drew. Drew was like bad last night. He and Jaylen Brown were both bad last night, which is a thing. And also, like Giddey was really good. Like Giddey in his minutes played really, really great. And
I mean, that was probably Giddey's best game of the season.
I feel like we keep saying that like over the course, like the last like 2 weeks. Like he's just been better. He just looks more like Josh Giddey did last year.
Yes, but that game was like especially good, I thought. I mean,
he was good. Yeah, he was very good.
Obviously, you can't count on the 3-point shooting, and like I mentioned at the beginning, like if you get to the playoffs and you can tell the opposing team, like, Giddey's going to take 7 first quarter shots. Like, that's the plan. Like, they're going to keep
Oh
doing that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And, we'll we'll see if he continues being like a 50% 3-point shooter or whatever. But he's going to get those shots, and he's looking confident in them. Like, he's not hesitating. He's not catching and then hesitating and then either passing off or then shooting the three. Like,
Yeah.
he is shooting it when he needs to be shooting it. You're seeing more of the type of passing that I feel like we have been missing. Like, he had that one play in particular to Wiggins cutting to the basket.
Yeah,
There was just
the
like a
pass
classic
plays.
Giddey, like, laser pass,
Yeah, that was great. Even the pass that Shea dished out to Giddey in the corner, and then Giddey just passed it right back to Shea. And
Yeah,
Shea
that was such a funny play because Shea bounced Derek White so far. Like, that was a play where I didn't know who to count as Shea's primary defender because it
yeah,
technically was Derek White, but by the time he scored, Derek White was like out of bounds on the
I was gonna
ground.
say he was like in the stands
Yeah.
during that shot. It's just like those like little smart plays that like Josh does, where it's just like, man, he's just a really smart basketball player. When he's playing in rhythm, when he's playing confident, he can still be a really helpful player. And there will be times where he's not hitting those shots, where he starts the game 0-3. And I think, he and Isaiah Joe's minutes are probably tethered in some way. Like last night, you could play Giddey 27 minutes, but there will be games where like Giddey's not hitting, he misses his first 5 shots, and it's like, all right, we need to play more Isaiah Joe. And like you have the option to do that. But
Yeah.
like, I mean, Giddey put up 23, 8 and 6, 8 of 14. He's up to 36% from 3 on the season, which feels crazy. I mean, Gaelic in the chat says that Giddey's over 40% on threes in the last 20 games. Like he's just been better. And and they went away from him toward the end of the game too. And like you have the option to do that. And a lot of that's like the precedent that Marcus set, that he's not going to necessarily just go with like the same lineups. Like he's not going to like Scotty Brooks or Billy Donovan, his way into these lineups. Like he's feels like the freedom to do what he needs to do. And I think because of the way they still like are playing Porzingis on him, like you can change that up, and then it makes life a little bit more difficult, and you can add more space, and you can create space for J-Dub to get his shots, or Shea or Chet. And the thing about like the Thunder is, I mean, it's so much fun watching them because they're so relentless. Like even when they shut down Shea and they're like, okay, we're just going to shut the water off on him. We're going to put Tatum on him. We're going to put our full focus on him. The Thunder still play the exact same way because like J-Dub does the same stuff. Like he still is driving. Even Giddey like does some of the same stuff. Chet allows them to play in a way that's just like repeatable, like every single game, because like his shooting from the outside, is finishing at the rim, and certainly the way that he blocked shots. He had 4 last night. I mean, the way like they can just you watch them and like, yeah, this is who they are. And what's cool is like you see them beat these really good teams, and like, are there some interesting numbers within there with like Josh? Like, sure, but like then also like Dort was 1 for 7. Like it was an uncharacteristically bad night for Lou, and it's just like, yeah, this is like who the Thunder are. Because in the past it was like last year they beat the Celtics like a drum, scored 150 points on them, but it was just like a weird lucky night and like a bad night from the Celtics. The Celtics played well. Tatum was awesome in this game. Porzingis was a monster in this game. And like the Thunder beat them. I mean, it was like full squad Celtics, full squad Thunder, and like the Thunder beat them. And it didn't seem like, oh my gosh, like the Thunder did something completely unsustainable. Like, no, like that's the Thunder. Like that's the team that we've been watching.
It's hard to pick out too many more like challenges, at least in the regular season, that they need to like prove. Like I don't know what else they really need to do. Like there's going to be schedule related challenges in January with how many back-to-backs they have and how many games. Yeah. But that's not super relevant to the playoffs because the playoff schedule is a lot different. It would be nice to see, it'll be fun to see how they handle all of these road games and going back to back.
You look at the schedule though,
Oh
Like,
yeah, the teams themselves, it's not that difficult of a schedule. It's just the schedule itself.
Yeah, the schedule itself is going to be tough, and they're going to have to lean on different guys. Like, there's going to be games where like Vava plays 20 minutes, But like, you look at the back to back, like Boston, and then they go to Atlanta. It's tough to do home road back to back, but like, even if they lost to Atlanta, it's like whatever. Like, if they lost to any of these teams, it's a whatever. They have Brooklyn, Washington. Like, this is not some tough schedule. They go to Miami, and they're back in OKC for Portland. It's like, okay. Like, the toughest back-to-back they have is an LA back-to-back, but they don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah,
It's Lakers Clippers next Monday, Tuesday. Then they play Utah. Utah's playing better recently, so like that's not just like a gimme anymore. Then Minnesota, which is a tough one. And then like they have a Portland at home, San Antonio on the road back-to-back. Like, and then they have Detroit, Minnesota back-to-back, where like they play Detroit on a Sunday afternoon and then back at home for Minnesota. So it's like none of them except for LA are really that.
Who will be on Detroit by that time, Andrew? They're going to be making some big moves.
I mean, sure.
Hey, by the way, guess who's in the 11th spot right now?
Is it still the Warriors?
No, I'm talking about overall. It's Utah.
Oh, Utah. Oh, interesting.
They're in the one pick that would give us the highest return from that trade, the Derek Favors trade. They're currently in 11th. I mean,
they're playing well right now. I mean, they really are.
They are. I mean, they're like, who knows? We'll see what happens. But they're like a game and a half back of Golden State, and then after that, they're like 2 games back of the Lakers. So, and they have the Grizzlies coming up behind them. Although I don't know what happened with Ja last night. I saw the play where he got hurt. He did come back, but people were saying he still looked off. So hopefully that's okay. But yeah, the Jazz slotted right in there at 11. I mean, I think we've both talked about we would much prefer to get that pick next year. And I think that if they're hanging around right there, well, actually, I don't know what they would do. Would they feel the same way? Like, we'd rather have our pick next year. And so let's just keep going all out.
Honestly, I think they would. Dude, I've been watching some draft prospects, and Mikhail and I have been doing some pods. Dude, I mean, some of the guys, like the guy right now that
some of these guys.
The guy that Gavoni has right now, going 12th. His name is Ryan Dunn.
Oh, yeah, from Virginia.
Yeah. The only thing good about Ryan Dunn is that he has the same name as the guy from Jackass. Like, that's the only thing good about it.
It is cool.
It's cool.
R.I.P.
Yeah.
Yeah, he seemed like a play. I mean, I don't know if he was the version of himself, like the idealized version, he could theoretically fit on this Thunder team.
No.
Well, theoretically, he was like a really good shooter, right? That was the idea. He was like a super defender and then a good shooter coming out of high school.
He can't shoot.
Well, that's a shame.
Just can't do it.
Well, in that case, not interested.
Can't shoot. Barely shoots. Anyways.
But wasn't he a 40% shooter in high school?
Dude, I don't know. I can just tell you his 2 years or his 1 year he's a sophomore. His first year, bad. Second year, bad.
Bad.
Yeah. Anyways, like Utah is sitting there. I hope the Thunder don't get that pick this year.
Yeah,
that's all to say. I hope the Thunder do not get that pick this year. Yeah, the Thunder are one game back of Minnesota now. Which felt like 2 weeks ago. It just felt like, oh, okay, the Thunder.
Well, yeah. At this point, it's like any stat. You can say literally anything about this team, and it will sound crazy. Like if you just bring up any stat, just search them on any of your favorite stat websites. They're 5th in offense, 4th in defense on cleaning the glass. They're projected to win 61.2 games. What else? In the last 2 weeks, they've had the number 2 offense in the league. Oh, by the way, I did look this up. Starting with the Clippers game up until now, 4 of their top 8 offensive performances by offensive efficiency have occurred since that Clippers game this season.
Wow.
So like their 8 best offensive performances, 4 of them, half of them have occurred since that Clippers game, which included last night. their offense efficiency wasn't as good as like the Knicks game or the Timberwolves game, but it was still like almost 130 points per 100 possessions.
Wow.
And they also killed them again in the half court. They were great in the half court. I think they were like 122, which is absurd.
Yeah, and
against Boston.
Yeah, it's all just like the drive and kick and the willingness of everybody to move around and the guard to guard screening that's just like happening all the time. And it started to like really like slip screens in order to create space, and that's been really fun to just see Mark try new stuff too, because and he's had to really be creative. The whole coaching staff has with Josh because of the way the teams are scheming against him. Like everybody's scheming against him like this now. It's like everybody just put your center on him. And they're starting to find some ways where they can put him in position to be a passer, to be a screener, to, and sometimes he is camping out at the 3-point line still, but you kind of have to just change it up every time. Because if he's just standing there on the perimeter and he's expected to either make or miss a three or drive into traffic or whatever, it's just not going to work. But they change it up every time, which I think is really helping Josh get into a rhythm. So it's great.
And that's why, like, as far as the regular season is concerned, like, I don't have a ton of questions left. Because they've kind of answered everything so far. Like, really, I'm now thinking about the playoffs. On a very small thing, like I was thinking about this last night. Will Mark's use of challenges change in the playoffs? Because he's been very willing to use them early in games. Like he used it last night in the first quarter.
Yeah.
And then there were several calls at the end of that game where I was like, damn it, Mark, I wish we had a challenge because some of these seem like BS.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of interested if his use of those will change in the playoffs. And then with the Giddey thing, like I think it is much easier. You talked about like, okay, some games he's going to start off, missing his first 4 shots, which we've seen before. Mm-hmm. I do think it's easier to sit him in the regular season. Once you get to the playoffs, the pressure of that and like having to make those significant of decisions of whether to play a guy or not when he's going through a slump, and you don't know whether it's going to be a 1-game slump or it's going to be a series-long slump. Mm-hmm. I think that will be really interesting. Mm-hmm. Whether he like falls back on the main guys that he trusts, or whether he's still willing to be like this flexible with the roster. Because that's kind of been the big story of his coaching career, like how willing he is willing to go deep into his bench on any given night. You'll look up and Lindy Waters will be playing like 15 minutes, in a game.
Right.
How different will that look in a playoff setting over the course of a 7-game series? We obviously were looking at those playing games last year as kind of like a sign, and they were somewhat, but it's also a single game. Yeah. And over the course of a 7-game series, how is his coaching going to change? Because honestly, like in the regular season, I don't really know what else they really need to answer for me specifically. Like, yeah, it'd be cool for them to go on the road and win some games against big teams. They obviously did it against Denver, but they're going to face some other really good teams on the road. I think you mentioned at Miami. That would be a really good test.
Miami's a big one. Yep.
And we'll get more of those as the season goes on. But yeah, I mean, the Josh question, like at this point, I mean, they were a very good team when he was playing poorly. When he's playing well, they're like a great team, arguably best team in the league. Mm-hmm. So really, I just feel like everything's now wait and see to the playoffs because I just don't know what else they need to do. I mean, the one like new thing last night or just over this recent stretch that I thought's been interesting is Micic getting more minutes.
Yeah.
He seems to be carving out a role. Now we don't know if that's temporary, and Mark might put someone else in there, but
I asked Mark about that the other day, and part of that is to kind of prepare them for January.
Oh, okay.
And that they just they do want to give him a look, but two, like just they need more, players in January with how crazy the schedule is. They talked about it. The players talked about it a lot last night too. It's just like being ready for the dog days of January, where it's a lot. It's gonna be a lot of games, and the Thunder, honestly, compared to everybody else, haven't played as many games.
I saw that Denver had already played like 4 more games than the Thunder.
Yeah,
they played a ton of games. Micic is interesting though because like he does present, as long as he continues not to shoot the ball, he does present a lot of the similar strengths and weaknesses as Giddey.
Yeah.
And it was funny last night. He subbed Micic was in there and he subbed Giddey back in,
Mm-hmm.
where it was both Giddey and Micic on the court at the same time. It lasted one play and then he took one of them off.
Yeah.
I do think like you have to split those guys up because it is nice having those playmakers because he is a good playmaker and that's his obvious skill. But
he had 5 assists in 11 minutes last night. He was great.
Yeah. But on the other hand, like he can't really get by anyone. It's unclear what he does offensively, like for himself. Like I was looking at his numbers. He's been a good finisher at the rim, but it's like, 7 attempts, I think.
Say it's been hardly anything.
He's had some success in the mid-range on 6 attempts, and he's shooting 20% from 3. So he's a very interesting player because I don't think he hurts them when he's out there yet. Now maybe teams will start attacking him more aggressively, but he does kind of continue. He allows them to continue playing the way they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can get away with that for 5 minutes in each half or whatever he ends up playing, I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I kind of like his presence out there.
Yeah, I mean,
Even if again,
last night he had that over the head hook pass.
That was really cool. Was that to J Will or was that to who was that to?
I don't know. I need to
trying to remember that was a good play. I think it was to Shea maybe.
It was I found myself just kind of laughing a lot as I was watching the game, and that was definitely one of the moments where you're just like, what in the world's going on here? Like, what is this?
Yeah,
because that lineup in particular was killing the Celtics, and you're just like, what is happening here? Like, this is kind of the goofiest lineup they could put out there, and they were just taking it to them. It was really funny. I think it must have been Jay Will that he threw.
Yeah, I think it was Jay Will.
Yeah,
it's like even the fact that he went to Kenrich at the 5 so quickly.
Yeah,
like I think he brought him in with like 6.5 minutes in the first quarter, and again that kind of speaks to like how good this is as a matchup for OKC, that they can like do that instantly right out of the gate and not really have to worry about it at all.
Yeah,
like if you brought Kenrich in as the first sub against the Lakers again, like I do think you would be a little bit more concerned. Like, oh my gosh, I just hope we can get a board over these next 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
But it just didn't really matter. Like they could kind of play their way with taking nothing off the table against Boston, which was nice. Again, it would be nice if they were in our conference because we will only face them if we were in the finals. But one other stat I thought was interesting. Shea took, I think he took 5 threes last night.
Mm-hmm.
All of last season, number of games with 5+ threes, 7.
Wow.
7 games all last season. This season, through however many games, 30, whatever, 10 games with 5+ threes. So it still doesn't feel like he's taking a huge volume, but it is much improved from last season.
Yeah.
He is having a lot more of those games, and he looked pretty confident in his 3-ball last night.
Oh, yeah.
Hitting that step back in particular, which his shot is just so interesting. His shot doesn't look like a lot of shots.
What do you mean?
Just the way, like aesthetically, his step back. I can't say that it's like the prettiest shot in the world.
It's functional.
It is functional.
Yeah, but it's not. Yeah, I agree. I was looking back at the play-in game and just kind of like thinking about the roster as it was then. I mean, we know who was starting. It was Jay Will in place of Chet, and then no Kenrich, and obviously like, no Casey Wallace on this team. And then like the guys who played the most off the bench, Isaiah Joe, Wiggins, Saric, and like Lindy played a little bit. It's crazy how much better the team is and the roster is this year. Like adding Chet, Kenrich, and Kaysen basically to the team. If like suddenly all 3 of those guys were missing, it would be like, oh man, like I don't know if the Thunder can keep this up without those 3. Just like adding those 3 to the rotation, to the roster, basically has made this team so much better. And also like the improvements, like Shea is a better player. Dub is a better player. Dort has been better. than he was last year. I mean, it's kind of astonishing, how much better they are just adding those guys, and two of them are rookies.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe like the last question to be answered, and maybe hopefully it doesn't have to be answered, is if they do have any injuries, how much will that change things?
Yeah.
Because that is the final question. Like if this team is healthy, if all these same guys are playing when you get to the playoffs, I'm going to have to be confident. How could I not be? Even if it feels uncomfortable, I'm going to have to be confident because they've been so good. And I know that like the big national conversation at this point is obviously now going to be, is this team a contender? Which you already saw some people last night. I saw Fred Katz tweeting that they were a contender, full stop. And really looking at the stats, like how could you not say that they're a contender? Like looking purely at this, like the only reason you could say they aren't a contender is purely because it would be a historical anomaly for a team this young in their first playoffs to really contend for a title.
It's age and playoff experience are literally the only two things that you would
and those
say are not.
Well, actually, I was going to say those are valid for Slam and Jam. I might actually go back and see like if I can find some teams that are similar.
They're valid. They are important. But like you look at the Thunder team that made the finals. I mean, the core of the team, Kevin Durant was 23, Russ was 23, Harden was 22, Ibaka was 22.
Yeah.
Like those are the guys. Let me look at the playoff minutes.
How old was Perk when we traded for him? Was he like 26 by that point?
27. He was 27 that year. Like the guys who played the most minutes. So the guys who played the most minutes in the playoffs, basically the 8-man rotation, you had Daquan Cook playing some, you had Nazr Muhammad playing a little bit. But the guys that played, and we also have to like have the caveat, like they lost in the first round to the Lakers.
Then they lost in the
conference finals to the Mavericks. So like they had already kind of been through a little bit. They'd already had like some battles. But like you look at the ages, it's like I said, KD 23, Russ 23, James 22, Serge 22, Perk 27. You had Derek Fisher who joined the team, 37.
He screwed everything up. He will screw that average up. He is dragging it up.
Yeah. Tabo was 27, and then Nick Collison was 31. Like that's like those were
even
the
that
guys.
Though. Like even that, this team is so much younger compared to that group. Like I know that Shea is a little bit older.
Shea's a little bit older.
That team had two 30-year-olds in their 8-man rotation.
I know. You look at like the 8-man rotation for the Thunder. It's Wiggins 25, Joe 24, Kaysen 20, Giddey 21, Dort 24, Dub 22, Chet 21, Shea 25. Those are the top 8 players. And then Kenrich is 29.
Whew.
Is the
one old guy.
Ninth guy.
Hey, we need Micic to play.
I was gonna say Vava.
He can make us older. He can make us older.
Vava turns 30 January.
Here we 13th. Go. Do you think that's why they brought him in? He raises our average age, makes us look more like a contender.
I think it's possible. He's starting to play a little bit more, and that's when they've started to become true contenders. Whenever Vava plays,
that's true. And he's so wise.
You think he changes his jersey number when he turns 30?
I sure hope so.
Because that's why his jersey number is 29, and it will be a lie after.
Yeah, I mean, like even the Grizzlies from a few years ago that won 56 games. Obviously that team still had what's his face, our guy Steven Adams. He was 20. He was actually only 28 at the time. They had Dylan Brooks, who was 26, Kyle Anderson, who was 28. So their core was still very young. Ja was 22, Bane was 23, Triple J was 22. But even they had some older guys on this team. It probably would be. I mean, I'm going to look back, but it probably would be a historic anomaly for this team to even make it, even like to get to the conference finals.
Yeah.
At the same time, the stats are getting overwhelming. The stats are getting to the point where it's like, I don't know what else to say. If they're going to be this good, how can they not be contenders? And it feels even different than, because I feel like we've made that same argument in past seasons about other teams. But it honestly, a lot of the time it wasn't as stats based. Like I remember with that Grizzlies team, the main knock was they're terrible in the half court. Like they're a terrible half court offensive
Yeah,
team.
they were. Yeah.
And that was like one of the things we thought was going to hold them back.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of had a weird playoffs and get bounced. With this Thunder team, it's like everything. Like it's not just that they're winning. It's not just that they're like a good shooting team, which they have been.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything. Everything. Yeah. Offense, defense, half court, transition. They're good at everything. It is other than rebounding.
Other than rebounding,
which they're fine at now.
They're getting better. I mean, that's really is the only true flaw because they play the right way on offense and defense. They move the ball. They're unselfish. They're extremely talented. You know, you have Shea, who's a top 5 player. You have Chet, who I think is a top 30 player. You have Dub, who's probably a top 40-ish player in the league. And then you have great. I mean, Kenrich brings so much to this team. He was making Porzingis so mad last night because he just like comes in and does all the little things that you want a player to do. Like you have that guy on the team. You have Isaiah Joe, like sharpshooter, but can do a little bit more. You have Casey Wallace, this is like the worst version of Casey Wallace we will ever see. And he's still really good. You know, you have Dort, who's like, I mean, he's been awesome. He's shooting 41% from 3. He's, you know, crazy defender. Awesome. Giddey's playing better. I mean, you just have like really the only thing that I honestly think they could use is a backup big just for like situations. But even then, like Jay Will was good yesterday and was really helpful to them. But I still think like maybe they could use like one backup big who like doesn't necessarily even play every game, but just like in case of emergency, in case you play the Kings or you play, you know, Denver or something in the playoffs, like just to have a guy to go to for 10 minutes. You know, not somebody to start, not somebody to like, oh, we got to move Chet to the power forward. Like, no. Like,
hey,
just to have somebody else.
Speaking of that, real quick, I don't feel like this has been talked about a lot, but the fact that coming into the season, all the talk was, Chet really needs to play at the power forward. Like they got to go get a big.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the Spurs are doing it right. Wemby starting at the 4 and Zach Collins. That's how you need to do it. Meanwhile, fast forward a couple months, Wemby's starting at center and looks like he's been significantly better. Like he keeps getting better. Part of the reason is because he's able to play as a center. And this like whole conversation, it feels like it has shifted the complete other way, where now the Spurs are mirroring what the Thunder are doing with Chet's development. And all of a sudden, and by chance, it's making a lot of sense, Andrew. It's making a lot of sense. Yeah. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the big thing, that's like when people bring up names like Clint Capella or names like that, I am open to the idea that you need a backup big. I do not think you want a backup big who expects to be a starter, has always been a starter, and is on a significant contract. If you can find that guy for super cheap, sure. Obviously, we've talked about Kelly Olynyk, and I know he's not like that kind of a backup big. He kind of is a backup big that would allow them to keep playing the way they like to play.
He's still like, when people ask like what do you, because people ask me all the time like at games and everything, like who do you think they should go play? Like I'm gonna have the most like boring answers for you. It's just like prefaces for him, like Royce O'Neal or Kelly Olynyk or somebody like that. It's like okay.
Here's the deal though, because somebody tweeted at me that like, okay, this team doesn't need to make a huge move. They don't even need to make a medium move. What about a small move? And they brought up Kelly Olynyk. Yeah. I would argue that any trade that the Thunder would make where you're actually bringing in a rotation player is a pretty significant move. Like, I don't look at Kelly Olynyk as a small trade. If you're bringing in a guy that you expect to slot immediately into this rotation, I think that's a real trade. So I know you don't feel like those are big names, but I think that would signal to me something about like what this front office feels about this team if they're going out and getting guys like that, because those are real NBA vets who have played real NBA minutes.
So, I mean, that's what you need. Like Kelly Olynyk is 32. When does he turn 33? He turns 33 in April, just in time for the playoffs.
that would help our average age, our
Not the
weighted
average age,
age. Yeah.
you know?
I just I'm still open to those ideas. I totally get people at this point, especially who are like, let's just run this, see what happens.
Yeah.
My only argument against that is just the health thing. I just think the worst thing that could happen is that you have one or two injuries that by the time you get to the playoffs, it's like, well, better luck next year. Like
Yeah.
if you had an injury to like Isaiah Joe, who we've talked about would be a significant loss,
Mhm.
or like a Kenrich, and then you get to the playoffs and it's like, man, if we just had one more guy, we could have made a real run at it. I think if you can just get some reinforcements, they don't have to be big names as we've talked about, but just
Yeah.
some reinforcements so that going into the playoffs, you know that you can take a hit, you can take 2 hits, and you can still throw out really good lineups.
Mhm.
I don't think you want to get to the playoffs and you're playing like the back of the roster
Yeah.
and still expecting to have like a nice run.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that at all. I would have like said maybe Goga, but Goga has still been starting with Wendell Carter back.
Oh, really? Is that true?
Yeah, Wendell Carter played last night, and
Yeah.
Goga still played more minutes than him and started, and they lost the
Hmm.
game. So, but
Interesting.
that's kind of interesting. I mean, they're playing a lot of centers. I mean, they're playing Mo Wagner, Batadze, Wendell Carter. It just seems like a lot.
Yeah, just let us have. God, Gogo was 6 for 6.
Goga's good.
He's a little gem.
Goga's actually good. I mean, I think they needed to. If you're going to pounce on him, it should have been in the off season because I think that the Goga ship may have sailed. Although, like, I think that might be the first time anyone has ever said that phrase in the history of man.
I think so. The Goga ship.
The Goga ship has sailed, but I think it's somebody like that. Let's see, just somebody that is maybe not needed on a roster, an old guy, old big man. Well, would you back Mike Muscala?
Oh, hell yeah. And I mean,
He could get bought out.
Muscala, you could legitimately not play. To
Yeah.
have him around
As a shooter,
great.
as a smiley guy.
As a smiley guy, maybe we could see some. Obviously, we've been deprived of our Poku Chet frontline dreams.
Yeah.
But some Moose Chet, huh?
Some Moose Chet for sure.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. And we know how it works here in Oklahoma City. It works great.
It works very well. Can you imagine some like Shea, Isaiah Joe, Moose lineups? Actually, I can because I'm pretty sure those happened.
I was gonna say
the
bomber lineup. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
They call it the bomber lineup. Yeah,
but yeah, I totally I will concede that the team does not need to make a big trade. Though I think I always said that. I said they don't need to do this, but if something came up,
they don't. They definitely don't need to. But I agree that for the playoffs, and maybe
have 2 more bodies,
and maybe the mode is still like, let's just see what we've got. Let's just see what we got.
Yeah,
but still, I think what you got is pretty awesome. Let me just say, this team is incredible, and to just add like one bench piece, like.
And it doesn't have to be a long commitment because it's the same thing like what happened last year.
Like a Royce O'Neal. Like I still think Royce O'Neal would be a great addition to this team. And maybe he wouldn't be very happy not being a guy that plays all the time. But he'd be a guy that's playing on like a really good playoff team. So
yeah. Because that's the thing. Like if you really believe this team is a contender, which I'm assuming a lot of Thunder fans at this point do, you do want to give yourself that chance. Like if you really do think they're a contender, you want to give yourself that chance because if what happened last year happens again, which is that Kenrich gets hurt and the team did fundamentally change. They still had good nights, but they did change. Now as you mentioned, they didn't have Kaysen, they didn't have Chet. If you can just buy some insurance for a scenario like that, that's all I'm talking about at this point. And that could be a very small move.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Because I mean the guys that would be stepping up into those spots. One, you probably just shorten your rotation, but like, I think it's safe to say like Poku, Jang, Trey.
I,
Those guys are not playing. They're not gonna. They would not
Poku
like
especially. He needs to get to the dressing stage first.
Poku, especially.
I
Yeah,
need to
for
see
sure.
him in a uniform again.
I'll also say this: I would not be opposed to some SAR time. That's all.
In the playoffs?
Just in general. In general, maybe not in the playoffs.
Uh-huh. I mean, I know I was into SAR
plays,
time
he's
early
pretty
in the
good.
season.
When he plays, he's good, and you know it. And
I know it, but we've reached the stage now where it's like this team is so good, and you're trying to talk me into Olivier Sarr.
No. I'm not trying to talk you into anything. I'm not trying to talk you into anything. I think they're going to play small. Like, first of all, like I think they're going to play small, and that's where a guy like Royce O'Neal could help. It's like he just helps keep you playing the same way. Even Moose, who's not small, but like keeps you playing the same way. I think those are the kind of the players that they're going to want to add to this team. I don't think they're going to add because people are like, oh, we got to get Jared Allen or we got to get this guy or that guy. They're not. I don't think they're going to add a big piece that doesn't match the identity of the team.
Yeah, that role, I think, if they wanted to, can be filled with a much smaller player. Like it does, and I think it should not be filled with like a $25 million contract. You don't want when you see how good Chet is at the 5, you don't want to then go out and get a guy who can only play center and is also making $25 million a year.
Yeah,
that player needs to be making like under 10 minimum.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's why, like the guys that we're mentioning, who I know that you think as like bigger players, but I would say like the guys like Royce O'Neal, Olynyk, like bench players for your team that will play. Like one, it's a low commitment; they're expiring. You could probably just use your second round picks to get him, and they fit the identity of the team. Both above average passers for their position, both guys that can shoot, both guys that aren't sieves on defense. Like they fit the identity of the team. They allow you to continue to play the way that you play, and that's why like Dario was a good player for them last year because he fit the identity of the team, and that's why I think that it's insane to me when people point out guys like Jared Allen. It's like Jared Allen doesn't fit the identity of the Thunder whatsoever. He would be completely different than the way that they play, and you have to like alter the way that you play just for that guy. So we have to really, really consider that one, if they even are going to make a trade, which I kind of lean toward they're not going to. But also we just
probably do a little something.
But also we just don't know. Like we just don't know what they're going to do. But would it shock me if they did nothing? It would not shock me at all if they did nothing between now and the trade deadline. But I would be floored if they went for somebody that didn't play the way that they play. I would be absolutely floored.
Or that I mean, because you had that tweet a week ago or so about, why would you want to disrupt this? Those are the types of moves where I actually agree with you, where I think that a move for a start. I know usually I hate everything you tweet, but those are the types of moves where I do agree with you. Like if you're going to bring in a starting level center, that would disrupt, and it doesn't mean that they wouldn't be good. They could still be good, but it would disrupt whatever is going on right now because they would have to change so much.
Without a doubt.
Bringing in whoever, Kelly Olynyk, Royce O'Neal, whatever, that's not going to disrupt that much. No, like, are some guys not going to get as many minutes if you bring in a player like Kelly Olynyk? Yeah, Jay will may not play as much if Kelly Olynyk was here.
Yeah,
Kelly Olynyk is a better player than Jay Will.
He's a better player. He would definitely play over him. He's kind of what we hope Jay will be.
Yeah,
as he continues to develop.
Yeah. In 10-point games, Andrew, which means like the final score was, 10 points. You know what I mean? The Thunder are 14-1.
Please.
The Thunder are 14-1.
Wow.
Which just tells me like in when it's within 10 points, like they're handling their business. No other team has one loss when it comes to that. The Mavericks are 11-10 in 10-point games, which tells me that they're not blowing out a ton of teams.
No, they're playing a lot of close games.
And they're playing a lot of close games, and they're screwing up in a lot of them. They're now 11-8 against teams above 500. solid.
That's really good, especially when you're just pummeling the bad teams.
Yeah, I mean, in comparison, Minnesota's 15-6, very good. Boston's 15-5.
Yeah.
So they could prove a little bit more, I suppose, if we're actually talking about them as a contender. But they've been much more impressive there than they were last year. Yeah. Well, I feel like there's some other things I was going to point out, but yeah, it's just every stat for this team now is like it's hard not to sound like a homer, you know.
They make it really tough not to sound like a homer because you're like, yeah, Shea could be the MVP. You know, they're gonna have the Rookie of the Year. Could Mark be the Coach of the Year?
Like he is,
dude. I know, and that's why you feel like such a homer because you're like, hey, they're just gonna like sweep the awards here.
They are. I mean, the Chet and Mark thing, those I don't want to say set in stone, but they're probably the betting favorites. I'm assuming they're both the betting favorites.
Yeah.
Shea MVP is getting like very close to just being like a thing that a lot of people are going to be saying. Like I think Steve Jones Jr. in their little 2024 preview with JJ Redick, that was his like one of his bold takes that Shea's going to win the MVP. And like the team is hitting all of the check boxes that would allow Shea to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like if they're within a game, if they finish the season a game within the first seed, like I think it's probably going to be Shea.
I think that they'll give him the MVP. I totally agree. I totally agree with that.
Which would be nuts. That would be nuts. Even though he finished top 5 last year.
Yeah.
That is nuts.
Yeah, we've had guys that have finished, we had Paul George, 3rd in the MVP voting. You know? I mean,
Can you hear that alarm in my background?
No. Okay.
Someone broke into the plaid pantry, I fear.
Uh-oh. Oh, no. A shout out to JJ Redick and his newsletter. Tommy does like what he's listening to on there. And he put Down to Dunk on there, what he's listening to on JJ's newsletter. So that was very nice.
It's always funny to think. Obviously, we know we have a lot of Thunder listeners.
Yeah.
And they kind of get the deal of what all the different shows are. But it's always funny thinking about non-Thunder people listening and maybe just dropping in on like a Friday show as opposed to like a Monday or Wednesday and just wondering what that experience is like.
Yeah.
For someone who's coming in blind.
We get to see it a little bit on YouTube because like people like we get the most comments on Friday pods. There was a pretty significant chat going on in the comment section on Friday where it's like, do you guys really think they're funny? Kind of thing. And then you have like the Down to Dunk, the true dunkers come in and like defend, and they're like, no, like you don't understand. It's great. It's great. I love it.
It's great. I mean, shout out. Hey, there's so many great Thunder podcasts. I'm going on Topic Thunder.
Are you?
Yeah, I'll be there.
Wow.
Shout out.
Wow. How about that?
Recording on a Friday.
Wow. Wow. I've got some significant guests I'm working on for this podcast right now.
Down to Dunk?
For Down to Dunk.
Wow.
We're on like the 1 yard line with 2 really fun guests that I think people really like. So I'm hoping, I don't know if I'll do one this week and next week, but within the next like couple of weeks, there'll be some big time guests coming on the show.
Wow. Let me check before we go, Andrew. Let me check how they're doing on their half court stats. Always want to see what they're doing there. Okay. Points per play in the half court. Number one by a wide margin. 107.4 points per 100 plays.
I've been checking it after games, and I just can't. I still just can't believe it because sometimes, and I try to watch a lot of other teams, but sometimes when you're just like focused on the Thunder, either you think like, oh my gosh, they're so much better than everybody, or you just like try to like guard against that.
Right.
You're watching like, oh, they're good, but like they can't be that good. But then you like you said, like you look at the stats and you're like, oh my gosh.
And there's a big gap, relatively speaking, between them and Indiana, who's at number 2. Now, here's what's so interesting. So on cleaning the glass, they split it up into half court plays and then put back plays. So, getting an offensive rebound, and then that starts a new play. They obviously don't do well there. In terms of points per miss, they are 29th in the league. In terms of plays per miss, they're 29th in the league. That's not surprising. We know that they're not a great offensive rebounding team. However, points per play, which doesn't take into that's only scenarios where they get the offensive rebound, right? So points per play, they're 27th on those putback plays, which I think is just so strange because you would think it would just be another type of half court like setting. And so why shouldn't they also be very good at those? I don't know. Defensively in the half court, they are now number 4. So still top 5 in both. Transition offense. What would you guess they are? We'll do points per play.
Points per play in transition offense?
Yeah.
I don't know. 4th?
11th. They're terrible, okay. Andrew.
They're terrible. They're awful. They're just top of the league.
Transition defense. What would you guess?
Transition defense? 13th.
3. They're 3rd in transition defense.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one. Oh, hey, before we go,
mm-hmm.
I was gonna ask you a stat. Crap. Now I have to remember what the stat was. Give me a second. Just talk about anything.
Brody Stevens says, without generalizing too much, the Friday guys are funny in a way that Aussies find funny, which isn't
really?
always the case with all American comedy. The intelligent but kind of weird humor is very Aussie.
Interesting. Thank you, Brody Stevens. Stephen Brody Stevens. Okay, ready, Andrew?
Yeah.
This is your stat. I'm going to give you as many guesses as possible to get this correct. Okay.
Okay.
We know that the Thunder are not good offensive rebounding. They rebound 23.6% of their own misses, which is good or bad for 28th in the league. So there are only 2 teams worse than them when it comes to offensive rebound percentage. Who are they? Just start rattling off teams.
Say the stat again. I got distracted by something.
So the 2 teams who are worse at offensive rebound percentage than the Thunder. There's only 2 of them in the league.
Wizards?
That is one of them. Great guess. Okay, so you only have to get the other one.
I knew that just because I knew they were overall the only team that's worse than the Thunder in rebound percentage. Is it the Grizzlies?
It is not the Grizzlies. I'm also going to be looking in the chat. Whoever says it first is going to win.
Hornets.
Not the Hornets.
Mavericks.
Nope.
Spurs.
Nope.
Indy.
Nope.
Detroit.
Lakers. No. It is the Lakers.
Wow. That was just a random guess. How is that the case?
I know. I couldn't believe that when I saw it. How is that the case? It doesn't sound real.
That is really, really weird. I didn't see your super chat, Hotspot Casino. Sorry. He says, FYI, I wish media would stop with the big 3 talk. Shea is our leader, and after that, it's Giddey who gives this team an identity. Nothing against Chet or J-Dub. It's Shea, then everybody else. I think that's true. It's definitely Shea is the man, and he allows everything else to work. I totally get that. But that's just the way that people think, though.
But also it's historical. If you go back to the big 3 in Miami, obviously LeBron was on another tier than Chris Bosh, especially.
Yeah.
But it's more representing that you could go into next season and legitimately rank all 3 of Shea, Dub, and Chet as top 30 players in the league.
Mm-hmm.
You legitimately could do that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. So I think that's more what the big 3 is about. It's saying that we have this many players on this level of a tier in the NBA.
Yeah.
And while it's true that Giddey does probably affect their identity more, although I think Chet
gives them a definite
defensive identity.
defensive identity and a more sustainable identity. I think I get what he's saying because I don't agree because I don't disagree because I think I've said this before too. Is that like Giddey helps them get into the way they want to play with the way he pushes the ball, his intelligence, his passing. Like he really does get them into it. I mean, the last 8 games, they're having a 123.7 offensive rating. That would be 3rd in the league, only behind Boston, the Clippers, better than Indy, better than Milwaukee, who have been like amazing, offensive teams this year. And a part of it is like Giddey's just been better. Like he's been so much better in this last 8 games. It's been very helpful. I don't disagree with that fact. I also just think that we haven't found a way. The Thunder haven't found a way yet, and they're figuring it out. They haven't found a way yet for it to be like completely sustainable, like for every single game, and it just like work just like clockwork. Where with like J-Dub and Chet, like it's more like you can.
Yeah, I mean,
on that.
It's hard to watch Chet last night and not wish that he had the usage that like Porzingis had in that same game.
Yeah,
like I would love seeing Chet take 18 shots in a game.
Yeah, and part of that's going to be on the coaching staff to make them to just like force that to happen and like find ways for that to happen, because in a lot of ways like Boston still got what they wanted out of the Thunder, and the Thunder just beat them anyways,
right?
And that's the way the playoffs are going to look, is that teams will scheme to make your worst players beat them. Like that's how the playoffs work. And it's Dort and Giddey like, hey, beat us. Like Dort and Giddey, if you guys can beat us, we're gonna make you beat us. We're gonna do what we can. And like, what was wrong with J-Dub most of the game? It's like Jason Tatum was guarding him. Tatum has been awesome on defense.
Yeah.
Like, and then they had to switch him, and then whenever they switched him, they switched.
That's why he blew up in the 4th.
That's why he blew up in the 4th. Exactly. And so that's what they wanted. Like that's what the Boston Celtics wanted. The Thunder beat them anyways. But when you get to a 7-game series, teams are going to look at the way that they schemed, that the other teams have schemed the Thunder, and they're going to have the time and the energy and the effort to put forth to make the Thunder's worst attribute about them on offense beat them. And like that,
and it will be even more extreme. Like teams will not care if Dort ends the season as a 40% shooter.
Yeah,
they will be happy to sag off of both him and Giddey and just pack the paint against Shea.
Yeah,
they will absolutely do that.
Yeah.
And then, then you'll either have a game like last night where at least one of those guys comes through and hits their threes.
Yeah.
Or you're going to have some games where they're probably both going to start like 0 for 4.
Yeah. Well, and that was what in this, like you would want them both to play well. But I think it's like one thing that's like kind of good when you're thinking about this team is that only one of them played well. At least shot the ball well.
Yeah.
And so it's because it would feel like more of an aberration if it was like, oh yeah, Dort and Giddey went 8 of 12 from 3, and then it's like, yeah, well, that's going to happen how many times this season? Like 3, it felt, you can feel a little bit better and like feel a little bit more like, oh, okay, this is sustainable, because like it wasn't some like aberration, shooting night for them. Like they've been the best shooting team in the league, and they shot like that last night as a collective. They did. That's the other thing we didn't really even touch on. It's like, this is the best shooting team in basketball. I mean, Law Murray did this article about the best shooting teams in the league, and he had the Thunder number 1 in the NBA. That to me, it just feels so bizarre to me.
Here, I'm gonna share something real quick so that our watchers on YouTube.
Yeah. Hey, YouTubers, we have tons of people. It's not a record number, but maybe a record number for just like a random Wednesday pod. No, this isn't a random Wednesday pod. This is after like them being amazing. But we have so many people in the chat. If you guys will please subscribe to the channel, 1, that would be great. And then 2, hit the like button right now. We need lots of likes. Hit that thumbs up. Hit the thumbs up.
So what I'm showing you is on Cleaning the Glass, you can look at how they're doing in terms of percentage in all these different factors, and just look across the board. Like in terms of all threes, they're shooting 39.9%, first in the league. On non-corner threes, they're second in the league. In corner threes, they're sixth in the league. All mid-range, they're second in the league. Long mid-range, eighth in the league. Short mid-range, second in the league. The only thing that they're below average at is at the rim, where they're shooting 65.9%, which is good for 16th in the league.
But the volume, where's the volume?
Volume, I can bring up volume. Let's go to frequency.
At the rim.
How will I find them? Okay, so they're going to be third again here.
I mean, you're just getting there all the time, and I think it will improve.
Yeah, so they're 13th in rim frequency. The thing they do the most, at least compared to the rest of the league, this is percentage of their attempts, is short mid-range.
Yeah.
So kind of in that floater range.
And
they're seventh in the league.
But
see, look at that. They're 20th in the percentage of their shots from three, while being the number one three-point shooting team in the league. Man, if they can bump that up, either through just who they have on the roster, or if they brought in someone like Kelly Olynyk, who's going to shoot a little bit more.
Yeah,
you could get that up into top half. Then they're see you later. See you later, league.
See you later, NBA.
See you later.
Thanks so much for listening to our show. I love that we get to do this. I love that we have so many people watching us live on YouTube. This is great. Let's continue to build this as the Thunder show that they're contenders. And what's cool is like they're going to keep getting better. Like we talked about them being so young. What happens with young teams like this, as long as they stay together, is that they just get better. And I am overwhelmed and so excited to just continue to do this. This is so much fun. Hope you guys have an awesome rest of your Wednesday, and we will talk to you guys again on Friday.